because I need to practice it. Because we're going back to Wyoming in a couple weeks, and God kind of gave me these words to say to the people of Wyoming. And I need to practice getting through it without being overtaken by emotion. But the most important reason I want to share this with you is because I pray that your children and your grandchildren will be able to say some of these very same things about Bluegrass Connections. This is my life, and Wyoming lives in me. Casper Mountain runs through my life. Wyoming raised me. You taught me. I'm speaking this to them, so just kind of like that. You taught me about God. The first time I felt his very real presence was on Casper Mountain. I heard him in the silence of Bear Trap Meadow. I smelled him in the pines, and I felt his spirit in the wind. You and your children were my first friends. You provided Christian schools for my early education. You taught me that some teachers are better than others, and some are more likable, but it is possible if you are willing to learn from anyone. This has become a metaphor for my life's encounters. No matter how unpleasant, something can always be learned. And it is most valuable when the learning gives me insights into God and myself. You taught me that if you climb the hill behind the church and you put your coat up over your head, the wind will carry you down the mountains and your feet will hardly touch the ground. You just have to step out in faith, and you have to trust the wind as you run down the mountain. Another metaphor for my life. You taught me about branding cattle, that after branding, the cattle carry the image of the one who cares for them. And no matter where on the open range they are found, there will be no question to whom they belong. You taught me about Rocky Mountain oysters. You don't know about them. You taught me to shear sheep. You taught me to love cowboys, boots and hats, campfires and mountain streams, sagebrush and snow. You implanted in my heart an awe for the wild. You taught me about Jesus in Sabbath school. You invited me to the manger at Christmas, and to the cross and the empty tomb at Easter, and I fell in love with him. I made seed pictures at VBS, and I did leather craft at camp. You baptized me. You taught me that if you know the general location of something, and you keep looking and you don't give up, you will eventually find what you're looking for. As we drove for hours over the dusty back roads of Casper Mountain, looking for sheep herds in the summer and the fall. Finally spotting the sheep wagon and the sheep herder, and watching the sheepdogs work relentlessly to keep the sheep together. You taught me that if you travel with friends who love to live on the edge, and you find yourself on a Sabbath afternoon perched precariously high on the side of a mountain on a road that really didn't look like a road in the first place, and the vehicle is hopelessly stuck in the mud, it's really important to have a strong anchor and a winch. You taught me that when you turn off the snowmobile, the silence is holy. You taught me that some days things feel different than they really are. Cold water on frostbitten feet feels like a fire. You taught me that vacationing close to home, because your family has little money to travel, is the best. Camping is about being together, and there really is no better place to camp than the Tetons. And I continue to come home every year so I can teach our kids about camping and being together. You taught me to invite everyone and to include anyone who wanted to be part when you asked me to join the youth choir. I couldn't sing, but you didn't care. You put me beside someone who could, because belonging is so much more important than getting it right. Mm. And I learned we all have strengths and weaknesses, and that's why we need each other. And the angels sang with us. You taught me that Hell's Half Acre is the only thing between Casper and Shoshone. And sometimes life is like that. But when we finally got to Shoshone, the drugstore had huge chocolate shakes. They were 50 cents each. And my family of 5 would buy 2 of them because $1 really was a lot of money. You taught me that it is possible to make powdered milk taste better if you mix it with whole milk. And that grinding wheat in your basement with a hand grinder rigged to a motor and baking your own bread saves money. And fresh bread, it tastes amazing with butter and honey. You allowed me to ingather. Some of you don't even know what that is. Even though $2 and change were all I get in a night. But you also taught me that Jackson Hole is a great place to ingather, because even though the snow is 2 feet deep, you could get $50 in an hour. You taught me about death as your family members died, and that it is possible to keep on living, even though some days are harder than others. You taught me the joy of hiking in the mountains until muscles hurt and skin was sunburned, and the importance of not stopping until you got home, or at least to a place that's safe to rest a while, and that life-giving water is important to take with you on hikes. You taught me that while moving can be very painful and may require leaving all of your friends and everything that is familiar, God is always with you. You taught me that early friendships can last forever. You allowed me to use my very limited musical talents during church as I played the organ. I was the best you had on some Sabbaths, and you encouraged me, completely ignoring my many mistakes. You taught me the meaning that though your sin be as scarlet, it shall be white as snow. When I stood along the Paposia River as it enters the sinks, and I heard tell of the barrels of dye they had dumped in the river to never be seen again. 1/2 mile down the mountain, that river emerged again, bubbling up crystal clear, without a trace of dye. You taught me the need for forgiveness, the struggle to forgive, because it doesn't seem fair, and the life-saving freedom and joy that comes when you realize that the grace that has been granted to you is meant to be passed on, even in Me Too experiences. You taught me to drive a stick shift on a dirt road that went up the side of a mountain at what seemed like a 70-degree angle. I learned that the best way to learn some skills is in the very worst circumstances, and that tears, frustration, and fear may accompany those learning experiences. You provided this camp for me, where many years I met God. Seeing him here taught me to recognize him in other places, in the eyes of the suffering, and in some of the poorest streets in the cities around the world. You taught me how to work hard. This camp provided my first gainful employment. I worked summers in the kitchen during my academy years, days that started before 6 and ended around 8, that left my young body aching. Then I became a counselor and a girls director to help pay for 4 years at Union College. You taught me that you never know the impact someone will have on your life when you first meet them. When I met Ron's dad on Casper Mountain 40 years ago at camp meeting in 1979, little did I know that he went down the mountain to his hotel that night, and he called Ron to tell him that he met the girl that he should date. And little did Ron know, a year later, when he invited me home for Sabbath dinner that I was the girl that his dad thought he should date. You taught me about romance and love, broken hearts, learning to trust God when a relationship breaks up. You taught me that Worland is a good town to be married in, but it isn't the description you want for a marriage relationship. You taught me about being stranded in blizzards, that it's important to travel with provisions for any circumstance, that a tunnel in the rock is enough shelter to keep you from freezing to death, and a snowplow in the morning can lead you through the storm, and a mother's prayers can get you safely home. You provided space for Daddy to mentor me as a pastor as I followed him through your towns and cities, selling books and giving Bible studies. I preached my first sermons in your churches. You believed in me, you nurtured me, and you loved me, and I want to thank you. As we step into surrender to love, that's kind of what our life is about, isn't it? Surrendering to God. Beloved, let us love one another. For love is from God, and whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. In the first chapter of Mark Batterson's book, All In, it's titled Pack Your Coffin. And he starts it like this. A century ago, a band of brave souls became known as one-way missionaries. They purchased a single ticket, one way, to the mission field without the return half. And instead of suitcases, they packed their few earthly belongings into coffins. As they sailed out of port, they waved goodbye to everyone they loved and everything they knew. They knew they would never return home. A.W. Milne was one of those missionaries, and he set sail for the South Pacific, knowing full well that the headhunters who lived there had martyred every single missionary before him. Milne did not fear for his life, because he'd already died to himself. His coffin was packed. For 35 years he lived among that tribe, and he loved them. And when he died, tribe members buried him in the middle of their village and inscribed his epitaph on his tombstone. When he came, there was no light. When he left, there was no darkness. This is a 1 John 4:7 and 8 life, isn't it? Can you live that kind of life? I can't. In fact, more often, if I'm honest, I feel like Charlie Brown. If you remember, Charlie has just declared that he wants to be a doctor, and Lucy, her words filled with scorn, says, "You can't be a doctor. You don't love mankind." And Charlie blusters, "I love mankind. It's people I can't stand." I believe God asks us to do impossible things so that we realize that it's impossible. We realize that we can't do it on our own. And the only choice that we have is to surrender to God, who is love. And love isn't just something that one does. Love isn't something that God does. It's who he is. Love loves because it's love. Again, beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God. And whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. And anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. Let's think about salvation history for a minute. Daniel, because he was surrendered to love, packed his coffin when he continued to pray to God 3 times a day. And he spent the night with lions, and God was there. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, because they were surrendered to love, packed their coffin when they refused to bow down to the golden image. And they took a walk in the fire, and the sun walked with them. Love was there in the fire with them. And David, Because he was surrendered to love, packed his coffin, picked up his sling, and he walked up a hill for some target practice, and God was with him. And the giant fell. Elijah, because he was surrendered to love, packed his coffin and boldly entered Ahab's presence, declaring, "As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives before whom I stand, there shall be neither dew nor rain these years except by my word." And God was with him. And God kept him by ravens and a widow. He erected an altar. And after the earthquake and the wind and the fire, he was finally able to hear love's still small voice. Hosea, because he was surrendered to love, packed his coffin and married a prostitute. And that love, living in him, demonstrated for all time that love does love because it's love, regardless of the actions of the other. And Hosea's surrender illustrated God's love for us. Hosea surrendered his ego and any need for love from anyone but God. Hosea's ego needs died in that coffin. And because he was surrendered to love, love won. God was with him. Mary surrendered to love, and she packed her coffin when she answered the angel, "Behold, I am the servant of the Lord. Let it be to me according to your word." And with those words,